And good morning to you and welcome back to Morning Live. We are now taking a look at your sports news. And then this hour, we look at a story which really has dominated the headlines in the last 24 hours. And that is allowing Novak Djokovic to play in the Australian Open. Now, to bring some context to the conversation, we are joined by former tennis player John Laffenie De Jager, as well as tennis analyst and a friend of the SABC, the one and only Bruce Davidson. Good morning, gentlemen. Welcome to Sport on Morning Live.
Morning, V.
Morning, V. Thank you for having us on the show.
Now, Bruce, I'll start with you. Now, you were there when the pronouncements and the regulations regarding participation in the Australian Open were made. So how is it that the authorities just couldn't be on the same page? And when I say this, I mean between the state of Victoria, Tennis Australia, and of course the federal government, to ensure that they're all singing from the same hymn book?
Well, it was very clear when Scott Morrison made that announcement 9 months ago. He said no player or official would be able to play in the Australian Open or enter Australia unless they were double vaxxed, and that was very clear. But he did make one small statement at the conclusion of his major statement that there would be a consideration made to those that got a medical exemption, and that's the one that Djokovic took. He decided to apply for the medical exemption. He sent it through to Tennis Australia. Tennis Australia then appointed an independent panel, as well as the state of Victoria, which Melbourne is the capital of. And they had two independent medical panels that gave the thumbs up to his application. And so he got onto the flight in Dubai, travelled down to Australia, arrived at 11:30 p.m. on Wednesday evening, had his medical exemption, had his visa, and of course the federal government, which is the national government, weren't aware of all of this. They control the borders, and they revoked the visa and sent him into the deportation hotel. So there's communication issues here. I think Djokovic played the game when it came to getting his medical exemption done. Tennis Australia, as well as the Victorian state government, they did an independent panel. They obviously want him to play, so you know that they did the best that they could. And it just seems that there's miscommunication within the government circles. And I see the Prime Minister Morrison is now blaming the Premier of the Victorian state. So it's quite a mess, in my opinion.
Bruce, just a bit more clarity on that medical exemption. Our understanding is that when an application is made, it's done anonymously. So whoever's sitting on that panel doesn't know who's on the other side of the application. Is that accurate?
Well, that's what we are told. The problem that I've got is that we know that Novak Djokovic is very anti the vax. He's made it very clear from the start that he doesn't want to be vaxxed. We don't know whether he's been vaxxed or not, but we know that that is a very strong standpoint from his point of view. The problem is that there are certain, and this interview is too short to be able to go through it, but there are certain elements within the exemption that allow applicants to get the exempt. The big issue now is that the judge revoked gave him the visa, right, and has allowed him in. And we're just now waiting for the Immigration Minister, Alex Hawke, to make a decision whether he's going to block that or allow it to continue. We know that that's imminent, and we know that the Prime Minister has been on a 45-minute call with the Serbian president only a short while ago. But the big problem is there's 26 players now pending who were rejected to come into Australia. Mm-hmm. So if he does get through, this is going to be a mess because 26 applicants are now going to file for a review on their situation.
And that could certainly be a mess. I mean, the tournament is due to start already on the 17th. John, I want to bring you into the conversation now. What do we make of how some of the other players that are participating in the tournament may feel at this point? Are they sympathetic towards Djokovic? Are they having some sort of empathy, especially because they've abided by the very same rules and regulations which he doesn't want to abide with?
Well, there's definitely, if you look at social media and you talk to the players, there's a lot of players that's for Djokovic, they support him, and there's a lot of players that is against what he's done. For me, it's just Djokovic did everything and what he needed to do, to play the Australian Open. Didn't want to get vaccinated. But then there was that Bruce said, there was the medical exemption that was put to the players where they can apply for it. And he applied for it. They said, yes, I've been traveling for how many years? It's very tough to get on a plane if you don't have the right visa. So he got there. They gave him all the documents. And then, like Bruce said, the federal government stopped it. There was a miscommunication. It's tough for Djokovic. I don't think it's great for tennis. I don't think it's great for Australia, how they've handled this whole situation. We'll never know the final details. I think so. Everybody has got their opinion, and everybody has the right to their opinion. The fact that he doesn't want to get vaccinated, I mean, I'm all for it. Let's get vaccinated. Let's protect other people. But if people don't get vaccinated, we can't say they're wrong, because people that's vaccinated also can transmit, and affect other people. So. But in our world in tennis, more and more tournaments are going to say, listen, if you're not vaccinated, you don't have to get vaccinated, but if you're not vaccinated, you can't play into our tournaments, like the smoking rule. So it's going to be very tough, I think, for Novak to travel around the world and play in these tournaments. And I don't really think that he needs all this controversial around him. There's a lot of people that obviously, they prefer Federer and Nadal, and all this stuff that's happening is just, puts an even bigger target on his back.
Mm-hmm. Bruce, let's look at this. We saw Djokovic's mother coming out and say this has been the biggest win of his career outside of all the Grand Slams. And really, it seems that the stance that he's taken is that this is bigger than me and my tennis career. I want to stand here for what I believe in.
Absolutely. Look, that's Djokovic. Djokovic, a very, very strong person. John Laffenie will back me up in saying that, he was the president of the Players' Council, and in the last 2 years, he's actually had a fallout with the ATP Tour, and he's formed his own Players' Council, which has a huge amount of support, saying that the ATP aren't doing enough for the players. So when there's a division amongst the players, a lot of those that support the new Djokovic player movement will obviously go with him. He's a very strong person. I think that 70% of his success on court is his mind, and he's a very, very determined person, and we see it when he plays, when he wins, how emotionally he gets on the court. And this is played out in this whole saga because his family had a press conference. I mean, it's very seldom that a family has a press conference on behalf of your player. You know what I mean? And this is the way the Djokovic camp work. We know the way they work. They are very proud, a loud type of organization. And even in that press conference which I watched, the brother actually ended the press conference because a question was asked by one of the media. A legitimate question is, if you say that you got COVID on the 15th or 16th of December and a day later you are presenting prizes without masks on at a function, what is the legitimacy of all of that? And of course, the brother shut down the press conference. That just says the type of people they are. But, one thing I'd just like to say, Craig Tiley is the tournament director. He's also the head of Australian tennis. John Laffenie knows Craig better than I do, but I'm a very good friend of Craig's as well. This man is an ultimate professional in everything he does. And he's a South African, and we know that he runs probably the best Grand Slam of all of the Grand Slams. And I fail to believe that they made any mistakes here. I can't wait for Craig to spill the beans and maybe we can get him onto your show. But it would be lovely to see when the saga all ends actually what happened, because if I was in Craig's hands, I would feel very comfortable in what I did. And I know Djokovic and Craig are very close as well.
Certainly, John, I want to bring you back into the discussion. Now, Djokovic has always said that, I really don't want to get vaccinated because I don't know what it is that I'm putting into my body. This is a fairly new vaccine. I don't know what the effects would be of actually getting vaccinated. And as a former tennis player yourself, quite conscious of what goes into your body, because you rely a lot on your body to be able to perform on the court. Do you understand where he is coming from?
Djokovic has taken everything, the mental side of the game, the physical side of the game, his diet to the next level. You will not see Djokovic put anything into his mouth that's not good for his body. So I understand where he's coming from, and he stands for it. And he's like, even if I have to miss a Grand Slam, I'm not gonna bail. You have to admire him for the strength that he's showing for what he believes in. But I mean, it is important, for tennis players, to eat the right stuff, to train right. And like I said, he's taken it to the next level. So I'm not surprised of anybody out there that he's the guy that's going to say, I'm not going to put stuff into my system if I don't know what it is. It doesn't surprise me.
Now, Bruce, Novak born between two civil wars. We've spoken and you've touched on his mental resilience and his mental strength. Should he actually be able to play in this tournament? Does he have what it takes to go all the way into the final and become victorious? He is, after all, the defending champion of the Australian Open at the moment.
Well, I think this is a setback to his preparation. I mean, he was coming into Australia not planning to play any tournaments beforehand. He was going to put solid practice in, and he's lost a few days there. But, John Laffenie will back me up. This guy's an ultimate professional. He's going to catch up on those days lost. It's not going to be easy. He's already had 2 90-minute sessions. I spoke to Jeff Goodsir, who's a South African coach over there at Australia, and said that he looked at the schedule, and Djokovic, as soon as he was released from that detention hotel, put in 2 90-minute sessions. We haven't even had 24 hours of release, which shows he's ultimate professional. He's been in the gym already, and he took a 5-kilometer run around Albert Park with heavy security. So that shows you the level of professionalism is, and he's obviously determined to prove to the world that he is the world number one, and he's going to defend this Australian Open title. Whether he has the fans on his side is another story, and he loves playing to the crowd. So this is going to be a very interesting one how it plays out, because 98% or more of Australia are vaxxed. So this is going to be an interesting saga.
John, just a quick one for you. I have got 30 seconds only left. We know that both these defending champions have had rather a rough build-up into the tournament. Are we looking at having new champions this year between Novak as well as Naomi Osaka?
You know, the young generation is coming through. There's exciting players. I definitely think it's going to be more difficult for Novak, for Rafa and Roger to win Grand Slam titles. But if there's one person that can come through this with all these challenges, it's Novak Djokovic. I mean, this guy's mentally the strongest player out there. And I believe this is only going to motivate him more to show them. And, if he wins the slam, he's got 21 slams behind his name, and he takes the record.
Thank you so much for joining us this morning, gentlemen. John, as well as Bruce, have yourselves a blessed day further.
Thanks so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, well, we'll wait to see how all of this unfolds and whether or not Novak Djokovic will be able to defend his Australian Open title. We were, of course, speaking to John Laffenie De Jager, a former tennis player as well as tennis analyst and a friend of the SABC, Bruce Davidson. That's how we wrap up your sports bulletin.